All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of the Raw Intuition Health Show. I am so excited for today's episode. We've got somebody on the show today that I have been a big fan of for many years now. I've learned so much from him, and I really respect everything that he's doing and all the people that he has helped. Today we've got Dr. Kahn coming on the show to talk about heart disease and helping all of you out there get through the holidays with a healthy heart. Because as some of you may know, heart attack rates go up during the holiday season, and so we're going to have Dr. Kahn on here to share some tips and tricks with you guys to hopefully help prevent that in you and the people you love. So I'll give a quick bio on Dr. Kahn before we bring him in here. Dr. Kahn is known as America's Healthy Heart Doctor and is the founder of the Kahn Center for Cardiac Longevity in Bingham Farms, Michigan. He is also the author of 7 incredible books, including Your Whole Heart Solution, The Plant-Based Solution, and Young at Heart by Design. You can find all of those books at his website, drjoelkahn.com. I've got that linked in the bio down below, or the description box. At his core, Dr. Kahn believes that plant-based nutrition is the most powerful source of preventative medicine on the planet. Having practiced traditional cardiology since 1983, it was only after his own commitment to a plant-based vegan diet that he truly began to delve into the realm of non-traditional diagnostic tools, prevention tactics, and nutrition-based recovery protocols. These ideologies led him to change his approach and focus on being a holistic cardiologist, and he passionately lectures throughout the country about the health benefits of a plant-based anti-aging diet, inspiring a new generation of thought leaders to think scientifically and critically about the body's ability to heal itself through proper nutrition. So Dr. Kahn, let's bring him in here. Thank you so much for being here. It is such an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Let's save some lives and save some animals too.
Perfect. Yes, I agree. And so at the start of every show, we like to just get a brief background of our guests. And so if you wouldn't mind, would you mind just giving a little bit of your personal history, how you got into, what made you want to become a cardiologist, and what also got you interested in a vegan diet?
Sure. And it's more a series of coincidences than a perfect plan, although some people might say, God, it looks like a perfect plan all these years later. But step one, I was born 65 years ago in Detroit, Michigan, with a heart murmur, caused my mother and father some concern. Had to see a pediatric cardiologist. I even had a heart catheterization before I was 1 year old. Fortunately, it didn't turn out to be anything serious, but I spent 1 or 2 visits a year to a pediatric cardiologist, and actually I thought it was pretty neat. I got a pretty good memory of that, and if you would have asked me around age 10, 11, 12, 13, I probably would have said, I want to grow up to be a heart doctor. So that was coincidence, and then I learned that biology was one of my favorite topics, and I was a decent student and actually got into medical school at age 18. So that was one part of it. The second part of it was I grew up in a family in Detroit where we kept a dietary code called kosher. Most people are aware of that. So we weren't eating cheeseburgers or pork chops. And when I went off to college, University of Michigan, down the road in Ann Arbor, I wanted to keep that up. And the only option really was the salad bar. My girlfriend at the time, has been my wife for almost 44 years, was in the same situation. She made the same choice in Ann Arbor the same year. And we didn't really call it vegan. I don't know, the word was already coined already, but we were eating essentially all plant diets. And then my parents, about the same time, went to the Pritikin Center, which now is in Miami, but back then was in California. And my mother's traditional meatloaf became a lentil loaf. So on the weekends, if I went home, I was surrounded by plant food. During the week, I was eating plant food. And then I started to read books. I figured, you know what? I'm going to be a doctor. I should know something about nutrition. And the first one was A Diet for a New America by John Robbins. That's still a wonderful book to read about eating plant-based for your own health, plant-based for the planet, plant-based for the animals. And then the last little piece was Dr. Dean Ornish published a paper called The Lifestyle Heart Trial about how plant diets are part of the program to reverse the number one killer of men and women, heart disease. And by this point, I've been eating that way for about 13 years, but nobody had described it as a powerful therapy. And I just started my practice of cardiology after all these years of training about 3 weeks earlier. So for the first 3 weeks as a cardiologist, I didn't teach many patients about my diet. From 3 weeks to now 35 years later, every patient's been taught about my diet, and many of them have adopted it, partially or completely. And now with documentaries like Forks Over Knives and The Game Changers and You Are What You Eat, it's pretty easy to watch, 90 minutes of good quality documentary and get a little bit of the medical background for all this. And about 10 years ago, I just changed from being a hospital cath lab heart attack cardiologist to a preventive nutrition cardiologist exclusively. So I pretty much just see people in Michigan and actually all over the United States because I'm licensed. And we go through, whether you have heart disease, whether you could have heart disease, what you're eating, what you should be eating. It's a very advanced clinic, but some of the basics are just, sleep, fitness, nutrition, stress management, all the big ones.
Amazing. Wow. Well, that's an inspiring story, and really, I'm grateful that you're out there because I teach classes in Minnesota at different co-ops, and I've run into many students who have watched you and watched your interviews and read your books. So you're definitely saving lives out there with the information you're sharing. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I am licensed. I am licensed in Minnesota, so I have quite a few Minneapolis and other regions of Minnesota patients.
awesome. So yeah, anybody can work with you virtually.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep, it
terrific,
works very well.
great. And then if they want to do that, it would be at the kahnlongevityscenter.com to book an appointment, or do they have to call the clinic?
Correct.
Okay.
They would be best to call the clinic, and if they're in Minnesota, bring it on. And, Texas and California and Florida and New York and all over.
All right. Amazing. Okay. Well, and I didn't mention, but guys, we'll be doing a giveaway at the end, so save your questions for the Q&A. And if you do ask a question, you'll be in the drawing for one of my ebooks, and then Dr. Kahn is going to have an ebook for you as well. So that is awesome. So let's get into the topic here. Do you just want to start us off with, what is heart disease, and what is the what is the outlook for somebody that might already have a diagnosis of that?
Yeah, well, there are indeed a variety of heart diseases. Sometimes we use the term, if you want to be fancy, cardiovascular disease. CVD is a common abbreviation. And you can be born with a genetic congenital heart issue, and that's what I mentioned in my own personal story, although it was quite innocent. You can develop a weak heart that's called congestive heart failure for a variety of reasons. You can have abnormal rhythms and racing and slowing of the heart. Those are called arrhythmias. That's kind of its own little area. But the big elephant in the room all the time is clogging of arteries. Humans are prone. If you take a dog and feed it butter every day, it will not clog up its arteries. It has a physiology that resists atherosclerosis or hardening the arteries. But if you take a rabbit and feed it butter, it'll get clogged up right away. And humans are much more like rabbits in the way we breathe, the structure of our teeth, the structure of our intestines. And you feed us butter, and we will get clogged up in most cases. There are exceptions. So we should be concerned, am I aging with clean arteries, or am I falling into that bucket of aging with clogged arteries? The problem is symptoms are not adequate. And a doctor looking at you is not adequate. And a doctor using a stethoscope is not adequate. And really, even a stress test and an electrocardiogram is usually not adequate. It takes a little more advanced testing, and I really believe we should start around age 40 to 45. If you're really on paper one of the healthiest humans in the world, maybe age 45, but if you're like most people, age 40, you should get extensive lab tests and some imaging of your arteries. I know I'd rather talk about broccoli sprouts, but there is a technology to knowing if you're moving slowly but progressively towards risk of heart attack, stroke, bypass, and even a horrific thing called sudden cardiac death, SCD. There's a process to know if you're on that path or you're not on that path. And if you're not on that path, God bless you. It could be because your lifestyle's been supreme. It could be your genetics are supreme. It could be just a little good luck. You go to the right house of faith or something. But a lot of us by age 40, this has been shown. There's an ongoing study in Madrid, people around age 40 to 50, and they're totally without symptoms,
Hmm.
but they all get ultrasounds of the arteries to their brain, and they get a calcium CT quick scan of their heart arteries. They're also doing a quick little ultrasound of their leg arteries, and dramatic numbers, almost half by age 40 have plaque developing, actually in the legs a little bit more than in the neck, and in the heart arteries a little bit as the third choice. So you do want to know. I mean, wouldn't you want to know 10 years before a cancer diagnosis that you were moving in that direction and make some changes? And you certainly want to know if you're moving in that direction in the heart world, because, as I already mentioned, one of the giants of the field, Dean Ornish, MD, heart disease is largely, not exclusively, preventable. You can make a smart move at age 18 and say, I'm going to live a heart prevention lifestyle. I'm not going to smoke. I'm going to sleep at night. I'm going to work out, weights and cardio. I'm going to eat a whole food, plant-based, not junk diet. I'm going to manage my blood pressure, my blood sugar, and my weight, and start that at age 18. That'd be great. But maybe you'll get a wake-up call when you get one of these early detection studies. And, maybe at age 40, 45, you'll institute that program. That would have been better to start at age 20, but I'll take you on at age 40 to 45 if that's what we get you. I'll also take you on at age 75. It still makes a difference.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So even if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, it's still recommended to that's not the only thing you need to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll just, two studies done about 10 years ago looked at how possible is it to prevent heart attacks with lifestyle. And they looked at five factors. And if you do all five compared to the group that were studied that didn't do these, you dropped your risk heart attack by about 85%. But only one of the five was diet. It was
Hmm.
eating more than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Now, if you're really eating a completely whole food, plant-based diet without a lot of junk, processed, frozen foods, you're probably better off, but at least get those servings. Number two was don't smoke. Number three was 30 minutes of daily exercise or more. Number four was actually 7 or 8 hours of sleep as opposed to less than 6.
Hmm.
That's come on. And the last one is controversial, but people that had a glass of red wine a day did better than people that skipped that. So I'm not encouraging you, but if you're in control of that habit, there is some support for it for heart disease. Some people get concerned about cancer and brain disease, and certainly addiction and driving. So, yeah, it is possible. But yes, if you're eating, doc, why do I need to check anything? I'm eating oatmeal with walnuts and blueberries and cinnamon for breakfast, and I'm having lentil soup for lunch, and I get this giant salad with chickpeas and black beans for dinner. How could I ever develop disease? There's that word called genetics. And there are certain conditions that are so powerful that you can inherit from your parents. If you've got a family where heart attacks are common at age 45, or people have dropped dead at age 42, or somebody had a stroke at age 51, there's a wake-up call. That could be bad lifestyle. It could be genetics. But I still encourage, I see many, many whole food plant-based eaters in my clinic, and they're smart enough to know, yeah, I do that lab panel on me that goes beyond what my family doctor did. And maybe I'll go get one of those CT scans of my heart. They're very inexpensive. They're quick. They're safe. Let me make sure things are going the right direction. So Personally, after 48 years of a clean diet and good lifestyle, I don't have plaque in my arteries at age 65. And I didn't have a dramatic family history, but my father had heart disease by age 55, of blessed memory. So, anyways, an early program of lifestyle prevention is very powerful, but it's not perfect. I still run all the tests myself, and regularly repeat them if needed.
Yeah, terrific. Um, yeah, and I think you just had a recent birthday, correct?
It happens. Well, actually, my most recent birthday was 65.5. So
Oh, gotcha. Oh, that's what
I'm
I saw.
already moving towards double sixes, the satanic one.
Right. Yeah, I saw you post about it. So happy belated 65.5 birthday for you.
Hey,
Uh,
you want to celebrate? I'll celebrate every month if we need to.
Absolutely. Yes. Um, so are there any specific foods that are especially good at preventing or reversing plaquing, or is it just all plant-based foods are pretty much equal?
Well, I'm always a fan of Dr. Joel Furman, and he's got that little list for generally disease prevention called G bombs.
Mm,
Greens, which from a cardiovascular standpoint, eating big salads helps promote nitric oxide production. Beans, and certainly beans are a good source of fiber that lower your cholesterol and can lower blood pressure, and I would advise you eat them. Oh, for onions and garlic, and particularly garlic, lowers cholesterol, lowers blood pressure, and actually some data can help reverse plaque, probably can help prevent plaque. M is mushrooms. Maybe a little less data about mushrooms for heart disease. There's some, they provide some vitamin D, which can help blood pressure. They're probably more important for brain and immune function. Then you get back to berries, and there's very clear data that berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries are very heart friendly. And then finally get to seeds and nuts. And yeah, when you look at heart studies, seeds and nuts are incredibly powerful at heart disease prevention. In the Loma Linda Seventh-day Adventist population, they discovered 40 years ago that people in Loma Linda live 10 years longer than the general California population. So researchers said, what's the special sauce going on in Loma Linda? And it was the home of the Seventh-day Adventists, and about 10% eat vegan and 40% eat vegetarian, and the other half eat pretty much standard American. But they really emphasized nuts. And the strongest predictor of extra lifespan was actually how many nuts you ate. Now, that has to be modified. That's not planters, honey roasted, salted, canned nuts. I mean, we're talking raw walnuts, probably the best choice over and over, raw almonds. Try and avoid roasted nuts. They really get transitioned with a chemical reaction called advanced glycation end products. And a raw walnut is wonderful. A roasted, toasted nut becomes, potentially a disease promoting choice. Although, don't be scared of it, but try and emphasize raw nuts. And then pomegranates, you got to love pomegranates for heart disease. Tomatoes, the red foods tend to
mm,
be watermelon, more nitric oxide production. Spices generally, there's not a spice out there other than maybe salt, but that's more a mineral
mhm.
that isn't heart friendly. All of them are.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So yeah, that salt is one that comes up quite a bit. Can you explain just what the problem is with salt and how that affects the arteries?
Yeah, the problem with a lot of nutrition conversation is there is individual bio variability. There are salt sensitive people and there are people that aren't so salt sensitive. So in general, across big populations, lower salt consumption has been associated with better heart outcome, more flexible arteries, more normal, healthy blood pressure. And if you have a normal, healthy blood pressure, you're going to lower your risk of stroke and heart attack and erectile dysfunction and clogged leg arteries and aneurysms. So that's why public policy says lower salt in the diet. There clearly are some people that have a little more salt in their diet, temporarily or all the time, and they have great blood pressure and seemingly, good cardiovascular health. But you have to make policies for the entire country or an entire population. So, famously, those kind of primitive native tribes where salt is really not even available, you know, adult blood pressure can be in the 90s and cardiovascular disease is almost absent. And, they're not passing out, they're doing fine. My blood pressure often runs in the 90s. I mean, I don't add salt to food, but it's in there at times. You can't help it.
Hmm. Okay, great. All right, and I did take my blood pressure before the show just to
Yeah.
um, so I know you're an advocate of. Do you recommend people take that frequently at home? Is that something that's beneficial?
Yeah, I think one of the best stocking stuffers, Hanukkah gifts, whatever coming up would be to buy a home blood pressure cuff. I don't own shares in a company called Omron,
Hmm.
Omron, but it's a popular brand, and there's one called the Omron Platinum for about $85. And you put it on your arm and you hit a button, and there's the number. There's also the heart rate.
Hmm.
And certainly in my heart patients, I say, if you call me and tell me you're feeling weak and you don't have a home blood pressure cuff, I'm at a disadvantage. But even in the general population, everybody's biohacking. We're wearing Whoop bands and Fitbits and Aura rings. Well, blood pressure cuffs are a more important biohacking tool than any of those. So they last a long time, and it's important to develop that habit. And a significant portion of the population shows up at the doctor's office and they're waiting 90 minutes in the waiting room. They wait 9 seconds in my office, but they typically wait 90 minutes and they're frustrated and their blood pressure's high, or they rushed to the office because they were fearful they were going to be late or traffic. And, it's not always the most reliable way. None of the biohacking tools like the Apple Watch measure blood pressure. So at the present time, you need a separate device.
All right. Um, let's see here. Another question I get a lot is, do plant-based sources of saturated fat like coconut, does that have the same effect as saturated fat from, say, animal products?
Yeah, the answer is we think so. There's incomplete science.
Mm.
The actual number of studies done on palm oil and coconut oil, which both may have 85% of their calories from saturated fat, which is higher than beef and butter, almost double. And certainly, unbelievably higher than a baked potato, for example, which I'm going to have for dinner tonight. And also much higher than even extra virgin olive oil if you're adding that to your foods, maybe 10 to 15% saturated fat, but much higher. And there's at least a suggestion that they're a bit rough on the gut, that you can develop a syndrome, a little hard to prove, but called leaky gut, at least in animal studies. Coconut oil, very tough on the gut. If you read, like I do all the time, research studies, there's a new one out this week. High fat diet harm to the body prevented by cocoa powder and green tea, flavanols. Well, that's great, but what was the animal model? Make the animals sick with a high fat diet. Well, you can do that easily with coconut, and they very often take the mouse chow and just ramp it up with coconut oil or palm oil. I think palm oil is a little cheaper. So I would avoid put coconut oil on your skin, fine by me. Do oil pulling, fine by me. An occasional coconut yogurt, coconut milk, that's not really oil, straight up. There are some populations, it's what always comes up. I think they're called the ketovans. They eat a lot of coconut and they don't seem to have a lot of heart disease. They don't have a very good longevity. They're eating the whole coconut, not a processed, 100% fat oil. And there's obviously a lot of fiber and nutrition that could be in a coconut. So I think the data is pretty weak overall that coconut oil is preventive. There's an occasional study for brain health, Alzheimer's, but actually there's more data now for probably extra virgin olive oil and brain health. So if you're gonna put something greasy on your food, and there's, some vegans do and some vegans don't, put extra virgin olive oil, spend a few bucks, get a good brand.
All right. Um, Before we get into the holiday kind of talking points, uh, now that you brought up olive oil, I know that's been a topic of controversy. There's some plant-based doctors out there that recommend against it. I know you have kind of propose the information that it is maybe not as harmful as some might think. So, can you maybe just explain a little bit about that?
Sure. And there's sort of a tradition. Back in late 1940s, a Los Angeles doctor, Lester Morrison, created a diet that he tested to see in people who'd had a heart attack in the 1940s if they could prevent the next heart attack or death. And he actually published this. It was a real study. Half got a low-fat diet that excluded everything, including olive oil, and half got the standard California diet. And they actually had much better longevity on this new innovation, the Morrison diet. Nobody really calls it that, but it was actually published in 1951. People lost weight, people's cholesterol dropped dramatically when there were no medicines. And then probably the next big jump is Mr. Nathan Pritikin. I already mentioned his name once. He developed a program without olive oil and most added fats. And Dr. Dean Ornish, I mentioned his name, developed the lifestyle heart trial, avoided extra fats by avoiding oils, including olive oil. And Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, certainly at the Cleveland Clinic famous, and even Joel Furman. But so I just named 5 or 6 names, but if you went to 100 cardiologists at a preventive cardiology meeting, 99% of cardiologists would say the best fat on the planet is extra virgin olive oil, the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, the MIND diet, and stay away from butter, beef, lard, beef tallow. Now that there's a little shift going on with people saying, there'll be one cardiologist in that room will be telling you, butter, beef tallow, and lard and ghee, but that's always the noisy, cranky person in the room. But there's something about our plant-based community. There were a couple studies that suggested there might be very transient harm to your arteries called endothelium if you just drank olive oil in healthy volunteers. But to me, it all kind of went up in smoke when in the year 2020, a group in Spain did a 7-year, 1,000-patient study, 1,002 heart patients. Half got a high olive oil Mediterranean diet, half got a low olive oil Mediterranean diet. And they were able to maintain pretty good adherence for 7 years. And the high olive oil group, they had to stop the study early, had fewer heart attacks, fewer strokes, less plaque in their carotids, and better artery endothelial function. I mean, it wasn't a vegan diet. It was a low saturated fat diet full of lentils and peas and beans, but not exclusively vegan, but seems rather definitive. And as we go forward, as I said, the brain data is consistently showing benefits. Now, is it the oleic acid, the major fat of olive oil? Maybe. Is it the 2 or 3% of olive oil? It's the polyphenols, some famous ones. You can buy capsules of hydroxytyrosol. I don't think you can buy the others. There's one called oleocanthal and oleopurin, but maybe you can get dried powder. Maybe you just eat olives. I mean, that's what a lot of people argue.
Mm-hmm.
Eat olives and you get the fiber and you get all these polyphenols. But I don't find prohibiting extra virgin olive oil as a reasonable construct. People go to restaurants, they want to do this long term. An oil-free diet in a restaurant is tough. It's not impossible. It's tough. And if you're very sick, do it. But if you're just doing it for disease prevention, this Cardioprev, that's the name of the study in Spain, Cardioprev, and it's more than one publication. It's a series of publications.
All right. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. So let's see here. In terms of the holidays, I know you've been doing this for multiple decades now. Have you found, did you receive any pushback when you transitioned to a plant-based vegan diet from family or friends and like holiday situations?
Yeah, there was a time that, our family get together at my house for Thanksgiving. My wife would still make a turkey for the others and would make, 10 side dishes for the rest of us. But I don't know, at least 15 years ago, we talked about it and we just kept the side dishes and left the turkey off the menu. And, people are fine because not all my children are vegan. 2 of the 3 are. And not all guests at my house are vegan, but my wife has become such a good whole food plant-based chef. She really is remarkable, and the food's beautiful. So nobody's going away hungry. And if somebody wants to, eat chicken at home before they come, that's fine. Everybody gets it. We're pretty serious about this. So the same with Christmas, same with Hanukkah. Lately, there really hasn't been a problem. There's more availability of whole food plant-based foods. I go to the Delta Sky Club when I travel, and that's not very often. And I really prefer organic food, and you're not going to find an organic label. But half the food in the Delta Sky Club is hummus and beets and salads. It's really quite remarkable. And it may be true of other airlines, but from Detroit, we generally fly Delta. So, restaurants I'm very picky about. I will look at the menu ahead of time. I might, email the restaurant and the chef, and surprisingly, you get very positive response back. And if I go to a restaurant last night for a holiday celebration, I took my office staff out. They're not vegan, and it was a big, kind of Christmas, New Year's early celebration. There was one vegan entree on the menu, which I was pleased with, and some appetizers, and obviously always salad. I post pictures all over social media. Thank you, thank you, thank you to the restaurant and tag them. Let them know it's appreciated. I'll fill out, that Google review and give them 5 stars. Thank you, because, they're going above and beyond. There are restaurants I just skip over. It doesn't work for me. So, and if you're going to somebody else's house, remember, it's just food. You're mainly there for, community and camaraderie. So if you have to pre-eat a little, great. If you want to bring, my wife went to a luncheon yesterday with some relatives and friends, and she brought a giant kind of peanut Thai salad with peanut sauce. And frankly, the ladies thought it was better than, the buckets of chicken wings and the rest. And none of it came home. Everybody ate it all up. So if you bring your own dish, you can be sure you'll have something to eat. Now, it occasionally falls flat on your face. I've been to weddings and other events, but so the holidays, it's a little preparation. It's really not that hard.
Sure. Yeah, preparation is definitely key. Just want to mention you've got quite a few fans in the audience already.
Thank you.
The Stacy from the Urban Pharmacy says hello.
Hi, Stacy.
Tessa says you're her all-time favorite doctor. So
wow, thank you. Thank you.
Yes. All right. There is a question. I'll just throw it out since we're just talking about the nuts. And you said they should be raw. Somebody asked, looks like it was Vegan Knowledge JJ asked, do they need to say the word raw on the walnut package, or does it just need to not say roasted?
I haven't done, a survey of what you're going to see on the shelves of a health food store or online. I'll give a shout out. I'm a big fan of thrivemarket.com. I obviously don't own it, but we buy a lot of stuff like walnuts from there, and they usually say raw on the package. But I guess as long as it's, you can tell by the color too, what a raw walnut looks like. I'll just take a minute on this. This is a current kind of passion project of mine. It might become my next book, but there's largely ignored is a body of science, 19,000 studies in the National Library of Medicine, that not only is what we eat important, but how we cook. It's critically important. And there is a chemical reaction. It happens to be called the Maillard reaction or caramelization. Just think of an onion, and then you put it in the pan with some fat, and you cook it, and it gets brown and then caramelized. That's what we call it. But that actually changes the proteins and the fats in the food, and it causes them to become altered and actually abnormal. And what's happening is a development of a group of chemicals called AGEs, advanced glycation end products. And a famous professor in New York City has been studying this since the 1970s. It led to a blood test, the hemoglobin A1C blood test. How sugar-coated is your hemoglobin? And that's a number you get in the lab, 5.1%, 6.9%, and that determines if you're normal or diabetic. But it's affecting our food. So when you take that walnut and you roast the heck out of it, you drive the creation through this Maillard reaction of advanced glycation end products sky high. and it's not quite as healthy. Actually, same thing happens with tofu. Tofu, you chop it up, put it in a miso soup, or maybe you put it in a stir fry with a lot of moisture. It stays pretty low in advanced glycation end products, but you just maybe you want to put it on the barbecue and char it up a little and cut it up after that. It really modifies it to very high in advanced glycation end products. Now, the good news is that it's almost all animal foods that have the highest recorded levels. Fried bacon, the number one all-time king of advanced glycation end products. And why would you care? Because they are related to directly causing kidney disease, diabetes, brain disease, heart disease, stiffening of your arteries, and on and on. So you'd like to eat a low age diet, a low advanced glycation end product diet. So if you're whole food plant-based, you're 90% of the way there. But if you avoid not too often barbecuing, grilling, roasting, and frying, you're all the way there. I feel bad for all these people that are unaware of this and are frying and grilling. And think about processed food is often heat treated. So one of the problems with the ultra processed food discussion that everybody's having right now is the heat treatment to make it stable for the grocery store drives the advanced glycation end product levels sky high. So, I don't eat an all raw diet, but we don't have a George Foreman grill anymore. We have a barbecue that hasn't seen the light of day in a long time. And if you use it once in a while. Also, if you're going to take that piece of tofu and put it on the barbecue or grill it, marinate it. Moist material that gets heat treated is healthier than a dry aged steak thrown on the grill. That's like number two to bacon.
All right. Thank you. That's very helpful. Um, the George Foreman was definitely a staple tool in my college life. So yeah,
Right.
I no longer have one either. But yeah. So let's see. Um, other than diet, are there supplements that you recommend that either the general population or specifically vegans? Is there a
Yeah.
difference?
Maybe take vegans first. And again, medical doctors vary on this topic. Some have argued, like Dr. John McDougall, blessed memory, a little bit of B12 done. And, that may work for people. And some don't even use B12 and they try and get it through nori or nutritional yeast. But check your blood level. It may not be working well for you. And some people, there is a blood test also called homocysteine. And I do it on everybody. The higher the homocysteine, the greater the risk of heart disease and heart death. And if you're B12 deficient or folate deficient, but you shouldn't be folate deficient if you're eating a lot of green leafy vegetables, your homocysteine will be high. And some people argue that, the reason we haven't seen even more dramatic health benefits and longevity in vegans is some just don't take B12 and their homocysteine's high and nobody checks it. But I actually think there's more to supplement than that. I personally take a vegan multivitamin with 8 components: vitamin D, vitamin K2, iodine, magnesium, selenium, B12, of course. And I think I'm missing one or two. Iodine, if I didn't mention that. So I believe, and I base my opinion on having tested. Oh, omega-3. There's algae omega-3 in my daily vegan multivitamin. And it's unusual to see algae omega-3 in a multivitamin, which is why I enjoy the convenience. But having tested blood levels on, tens of thousands of patients for nutrients and, a good portion of them being vegans, it's already been estimated more than 80% of Americans are nutrient deficient, and vegans aren't necessarily much different. Omega-3 is a huge issue. If you're not pounding down chia, flax, hemp, walnuts, you might think about an algae omega-3 supplement.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Um, do you have a favorite holiday meal?
Yeah, we eat a lot of good stuff. I mean, I'm always happy to see a baked potato, excuse me, a sweet potato casserole with a little streusel on top. That's awesome. I have a daughter-in-law born in Cuba, but for some reason, I think when she lived in Caracas, she gravitated to a watercress salad, a
Mm,
watercress hearts of palm salad. And, for a lot of us, watercress is a little exotic, but it's actually many people judge the healthiest green plant on the planet in terms of nutrient density. So she brings over that whole big bowl with a little vinaigrette. I'm happy as a clam there. Um, I like cranberry sauce in the holiday season. Cranberries are awesome for your urinary tract. They're a berry.
sure.
If you're having trouble getting up too many times at night to pee, think about dried cranberry powder and actually might cut that down. Or
All right. Terrific. Okay. Well, let's see. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, I was going to mention one other thing, and that is, I know I've heard you mention microplastics, and I know
right.
that a lot of people are consuming packaged foods out of plastic. Can you just share just a little bit about the impact of microplastics on our arteries and heart disease?
Yes, indeed. This is the concern about plastics. Again, most of you listening aren't old enough to remember the movie The Graduate, Dustin Hoffman. And the question, what's the future? And the answer was plastics. I think it was about 1965, or maybe I got the year wrong. But boy, did we take a turn with an explosion in the plastic industry. And now it's coming around to kick us in the rear. But, everywhere from plastic bottles to styrofoam cups to clothes we wear to particulate matter in the air we breathe. We're developing these, they're called microplastics and nanomicroplastics, I think is the other term.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finding them in the body. We're finding them in the testes or in the penis. We found them in plaque in people's arteries when they remove them at surgery. I'm sure we found them in the brain now. They probably are causing inflammation. There's others, like PFAS, the forever chemical, raises cholesterol and may influence heart disease risk. And of course, BPA and BPS are endocrine disruptors along with phthalates and DDT and mess up your fertility and your thyroid function. But now these new microplastics are just throughout the body. And I think we're just learning what the risk is. So be a zealot. I've always said I'm not a fan of the McDonald's burger, but I think the wrapper that it comes in, when they put that hot burger in and all the chemical plastics that get into the bun, maybe just as bad as the burger. So, that's why home cooking is the key to health, and most days.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I just learned that actually in the manufacturing process of plastics, a lot of times for as additives, they add heavy metals and other toxic materials. And when you get the
Yeah.
microplastics, they basically adsorb onto there and just carries it right with it. So you're getting the PFAS, the BPA, all that other stuff in with it. That's pretty crazy.
There are some strategies. I like infrared sauna, some data that detoxifies. I like chlorella, a handful of chlorella most days. Cilantro may be detoxifying. There's some data for all this.
Sure. Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, I want to get for the last couple minutes here, we'll get some of these audience questions in. So let's hop on over to the Q&A room. And thank you again, before we get into the Q&A, thank you for all of the information that you shared with us today and your time and just everything that you're doing. I really appreciate it. Everybody down in the description box below, check out Dr. Kahn's. I've got his Instagram, his YouTube, his couple of his websites, and so definitely check out his resources. Yeah. And give him a follow. I'm actually gonna reach out, I think, to I don't know. Before I'll just mention this. Why is it so difficult to get certain tests done when you go to the doctor, like just a general doctor? I tried to get my MMA done or my homocysteine done, and they would only do the regular blood B12. And there's other tests that I tried to do,
Yeah,
and they wouldn't do it.
creatures of habit, lack of experience, unfamiliarity with the billing codes
Mm,
and what it means. your doctor will look silly when it comes back abnormal and says, I don't know what an MMA is, which is a more advanced way of measuring B12 levels. Of course, something I draw on everybody. Now, the reality is, if you have a few extra bucks, there are companies now that are popping up everywhere. And my patients bring me these crazy lab panels, a company named Ulta, I think ULTA is one. They work with Quest, a popular one called mylifeforce.com, and a very popular one called functionhealth.com. But you're going to be spending, if you want 100 lab panel, you can buy one nowadays, and it'll come with some guidance when it comes back. And it might be $400 or $500 to get that panel, and that may be beyond your means, but this ability to go outside your primary care doc and outside the insurance system has become quite available now. And maybe even more frustrating is I mentioned a CT scan called a coronary artery calcium CT scan that I would advise any 45-year-old man and any 45 to 50-year-old woman to seriously consider once. Quick, easy, safe test. But that you do need a prescription for. And that your doctor may fight you tooth and nail and say, I don't order those. Same issue comes back abnormal. They may have no experience what to do with it. But boy, I would just keep asking, when I ask a patient, how did you arrange to get a calcium score the first time I see them? The answer usually is that, I pushed and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll have to do that. Otherwise, if people do want to work with your center, they could could they do the testing through you guys?
Yeah, I write those scripts all the time in about 26 states, and I'm licensed, so it's totally appropriate.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you for that. Let's see. There are a few questions in here. We've only got a few minutes left, but I think. Let's see here. Maria says, "What kind of exercise do you recommend for healthy hearts? There are many. There are any exercises that might be harmful? Are there any exercises that might be harmful?"
Yes, I do. That's the answer, because I recommend any kind of exercise that gets you off your rear end, vigorous or, zone two modest, from walking to jogging to swimming to tennis to racquetball to pickleball to weights. I spent about half my life cardio, half my life strength training. I like high intensity interval training. I did it this morning. I ran the treadmill for a minute. I walked for 30 seconds. I ran for a minute. I walked for 30 seconds. There's some data that HIIT exercise is particularly good for your arteries. So I include that, not every day, but, fairly frequently. But the biggest mistake is to say, I only have 10 minutes, or, I only have dumbbells. Do whatever you got.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Let's see. Extropian Transhuman asked about what about, do you know anything about olive leaf? Eating the leaves in terms of
Yeah,
getting
olive
polyphenols?
leaf extract. Olive leaf extract is a capsule you can buy at a health food store or site. And an olive leaf extract is reported to lower blood pressure. You can buy it alone. You can buy it in a lot of natural blood pressure lowering combinations, and it probably works.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. I think Vegan Knowledge JJ asked, I think she was asking about your take on fruit controversy. She said, every other video, fruit is good, or limit fruit related to heart health. Is fruit good or bad, or do we need to limit it? Is there a maximum?
Right. I don't really know about any fruit controversy in the base community. Eat it, enjoy it, love it. There actually are fruitarians that eat the majority of their calories from fruit and do very well with it. Some are long distance runners. I think his name is Michael Ornstein is the one that comes to mind.
Right.
Um, some people think eat your fruit earlier in the day, not later in the day, for optimal blood sugar control. I don't know how well supported that is, but it's a common statement. Some people find if they wear those monitors, those continuous glucose monitors, some fruit like grapes are notorious for spiking blood sugar, where low glycemic berries are less notorious. But I wouldn't really negotiate it. They're all 1,000 times better than a donut.
Perfect. Let's see here. Um, Extropian transhuman wanted to know about the olive oil study. And I think you maybe mentioned it might have been the polyphenols or something, but do you know why more oil showed benefit?
I don't think they nailed down the exact mechanism. It's if you're using olive oil in place of butter, lard, ghee,
Mm.
beef tallow, you're reducing your saturated fat and upping your polyphenols and the rest. Um, Number two, the oleic acid, the fatty acid part of it, the monounsaturated fat is felt to be a very healthy component. Um, I think those are usually what's described.
Okay. Um, what is an ideal blood pressure, and what affects our blood pressure? Is it saturated fat?
Yeah. Yeah, 110 over 70 would be really the bullseye. Most people aren't there. Some people, say I'm 130 over 82 and I'm happy, but that's not really normal. Genetics play a role in almost everything, though they're very hard to define for high blood pressure. Kidney disease, if you have, some abnormality, if you've had a kidney removed, if your kidneys aren't functioning, for sure. But then you get to weight, diet, sleep apnea, being obese, snoring at night, inadequate sleep, stress affecting your sleep. Alcohol raises blood pressure. We talked about salt already. Whereas, brightly colored fruits and vegetables tend to bring it down. So eat your garlic and eat your berries and eat your greens and bring your blood pressure down.
Right. Over on Instagram, LX Durian was wondering about vitamin D. How important is vitamin D for heart health?
D like David?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good data. The latest conversation more and more has been vitamin D and blood pressure control. And, there's been data during COVID, if you were vitamin D deficient, seriously, you had a greater risk of a serious COVID situation. So you didn't want to be vitamin D deficient during COVID. And we still are dealing with, various viruses.
Hmm.
But probably blood pressure is the most people that are very low in vitamin D. And you really just got to get a blood test. Uh, I have so many people tell me I don't take vitamin D in the summer because I'm outside, and then we check their blood in the summer and it's horribly low. So most of my people, I recommend take vitamin D 12 months a year. I do, and the rest.
What level do you think is appropriate for somebody to be at?
The normal is over 30. I run personally between 50 and 80.
Okay.
I take 5,000 international units a day. Most of my patients take the same dose, some more, some less. Check with your doctor.
All right.
Maybe one more question.
All right. Actually, we'll just do the drawing just so we can
Okay.
squeeze that in here. So I'm going to pull in the wheel. A few people asked quite a few questions, so I think we only got 4 different people. So we're going to pull in the wheel. Oops. Oh no. Okay, we've got the wheel here. So we've got Alex Durian, Maria, Vegan JJ, and Extropian Transhuman. So you guys are going to be in the drawing here, and let's get the wheel spinning. And it's Vegan JJ. There you go. Congratulations.
Good job. Congrats.
Yes, congratulations. Just send me an email at matt@myrawintuition.com, and we'll get you set up with that, with your ebooks. And again, Dr. Kahn, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be on the show and sharing all this important information with us.
Thank you very much. I will email you a ebook also. So thank you for your hard work. We need lots of warriors.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for being a leader in this movement and saving lives. And we will catch up with you another time. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, everybody, tune in next week, same time, same place, and we will have another guest for another episode. And until then, always follow your raw intuition.